Hey guys! So after we did our 4 types of introverts, there was, I think, a lot of support for us doing the 4 types of extroverts, so yeah, here we are. Yeah, so if you haven't seen our 4 types of introverts video, I guess the basis of this is that there are actually 4 extroverted cognitive functions as per the theory of Myers-Briggs. Even though we lump extroversion into like the singular thing, there are actually 4 types of extroversion in terms of like which is the extrovert's dominant function. So yeah, we're kind of just going to explain these different types of extroversion.
And how you can spot them in real life. Yeah, I feel like for the introverts, it was kind of like how to spot an introvert, because obviously like introverted function, it's kind of like hard to see. You have to like look for clues. For the extroverted functions, I kind of structured mine as in like how to feel their extroversion upon you. So we're gonna go through those.
Yes. All right. Let's start off with FE DOMs. So I feel like these are the extroverts who are in tune with the general social emotional environment surrounding them, which is generally like very people oriented. So they're very aware of like the group and who's around them and what they are feeling and how to like accommodate, I think, for everyone.
Okay, so the keywords that I wrote for FE DOMs are harmony and discordance, emotional potency, and affect. So personally, as a high FI user, I think the easiest extroverted type to identify are the FE DOMs, because you want to watch out for, when you're interacting with them, you can watch out for any emotional shifts within you, and then you can determine whether or not that was like intentional. So I think FE DOMs are very adept at reading the situation, and if they want to, affecting the emotional situation by, for example, giving you a compliment.
So yeah, they have very well developed social and interpersonal skills a lot of the time. Like they just know how to interact with like every different person in like every different situation. Like that's just a skill that I think they develop very naturally. Generally they come off as very warm. Of course, if they like want to intentionally come off as like cold or distant, they can do that too.
But you have to very effectively.
Yeah, but you have to really like make them mad for them to like go to that opposite polar end. Yeah. Generally, I think they'll kind of take most things in stride and just generally affect kind of positive emotions to you. So yeah, they know how to effectively convey emotions to others so that the other person will feel that emotion and actually like want to respond to it.
Going along with this, like this is something totally congruent. You can also watch out for word emphasis and tonal emphasis. And what I mean by that, obviously I'm emphasizing certain words, but the key word here is clarity of tone, right? Like a tone that can't be misconstrued as anything else. I feel like FI users or lower FE users, it can be just a bit ambiguous what they're feeling or how they want you to feel, but with FE users, it's quite clear. Like if they're upset at you and they're using a harsh tone, it's very clear. And if they're trying to inspire you to change or something, it's very clear. It's really hard to misread the emotional intent of an FE user.
Yeah.
I mean, a high FE user.
Yeah, for sure. Based on last time with introvert video, I kind of said, okay, introverts are detached in different ways. So I thought like, okay, so extroverts are kind of more like people-oriented in different ways. Because I guess that's the kind of stereotypical definition of extroverts. It's like, oh, they enjoy people. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily the best way to describe it, but I do think that extroverts all kind of are people-oriented, but just in maybe some in more obvious ways and some in less obvious ways.
Sure.
So I feel like the extroverted feeler actually is people-oriented in quite an obvious way.
Yeah.
So they generally just want to like make sure that you know that they are like feeling these positive emotions to you. They want to make sure that you are taken care of in like every way possible. So I think, yeah, you will see this people orientation quite clearly with the FE DOMs. Okay, yeah, so I thought that as extroverts, they're detached from like their introverted function, which is their lowest function. So for FE DOMs, they are detached from inner logical consistency. So when they act, they will just proceed with what they think the emotional or social environment calls for at that specific moment and what would be the most like effective way of dealing with that. But they may not actually go back internally and be like, okay, is this all logically consistent with one another? Like, do my actions always align in the same way?
Maybe a common example of that is just something like exaggeration. where they're telling a story in the most emotionally effective way, but it might not be like perfectly logically exactly the way it happened.
Right. Okay, so moving on to the other extroverted judger is TE dominance. Okay, so these are the extroverts that want to do things and want to do so effectively. A lot of times they may come off as kind of like achievers, or just people who are like very kind of like busy, always like have this other thing to do, this other thing to do. Maybe they might come off to people as like workaholics, even though it might be a completely healthy relationship with work for them.
Yeah, keywords I wrote for TE doms are optimize, effectivize, and problem solving. So what I noticed was that they will make unsolicited suggestions frequently because they see, like, sometimes you're talking about a problem and they see, oh, opportunity to solve this problem. Okay, so for example, I think once I was saying that I used to take dance lessons, but I don't anymore after moving to the city, which to me was not a problem. But the TE dom that I was talking to immediately was like, oh, I know like these dance studios that you could go to. I was like, but that was not a problem. Like, thanks. And sometimes when they're making these suggestions, it can kind of make you feel like you're not good enough already. Yeah. Like, they're like, here's what you could be. But then you gotta realize that this is how they treat themselves and every other situation, including objects. I know I just like called other people objects.
Yeah, so they can be very blunt and even kind of forceful sometimes with like, yeah, trying to optimize you or trying to solve the problem. Yeah, even though it can come across quite blunt, I think this is with like good intentions. They just genuinely want to help you out, even if it's like maybe not communicated or emoted in like the most appropriate way all the time.
They can be confused by like a lack of obvious logic and things that people do just because they like it. For example, like the TE doms have asked me like the strangest questions, like, what is this bow for? Like, what are your ears for? And I'm like, because I like them. And they're like, oh, okay. Because they don't serve any like inherent logical purpose, so I get asked questions about it by the TE dom.
With TE doms, it might not be super obvious that they are people-oriented like some other extroverts, but I think they are kind of people-oriented in like a more of a business sense, and like how they can either help others or how others can be useful to them. So I think, yeah, like in this sense, they can rally people together for like a common purpose, but they won't do this in the way that an FE user will, by like inspiring them or uplifting them. They will just like be like, okay, look at this objective thing that we can do, and here's the results that we can achieve, and everybody, let's do this. Or they, yeah, exactly like the way Calypso was kind of saying, they will come to you and be like, okay, you could be up here, let me show you how to fix your problems. And it's because they can be kind of blunt or forceful and don't have this kind of like emotional finesse to their actions, it might not seem like they are people oriented. You might actually think that like, oh, this person like doesn't like people because of the way they act or something, which is not true.
Maybe Alex was talking about what their people are detached from, so like a TE user would be like semi-detached from their FI, so then sometimes they fail to see other people's individual desires or fail to take them into account.
Yeah, they are detached from inner consistency in their own values. So they might give preference to like what is externally achievable and not think about whether they value it or whether that is maybe like ethically consistent with what they think is like moral or things like that. So now let's move on to the extroverted perceivers. So we'll start off with SE DOMs, extroverted sensing. So these are the extroverts, I think, that just like to explore and experience their physical reality and like try to get the most out of life, because I think they live life for experiencing things and for creating experiences.
Yeah, I think they're very in the moment, seizing the opportunity in terms of manipulating objects or like starting things with people. High SE means they're rooted kind of in the environment, like they're very present in the space, which means that I tend to just notice them like right away in a room. Generally, this can manifest in like having good reflexes, but it could also be more like, I don't know, metaphorical, as in reacting to like a present opportunity. I guess this is kind of a stereotype because we think of NE as the one that's like what's possible, but I think SE is also about what's possible, but from like what is right now. Yeah, so just by manipulating what is right now in this moment, they can like make all sorts of things happen.
Yes, like I think both perceiving types do see possibilities,
Mm.
but they do see possibilities related to like the concrete kind of tangible things. So this can make them good at a lot of things. It can make them good in like arts or like business or even like science that is very grounded in like, concrete reality, or like trades, or like so many different things.
They're so intense. Like I feel their energy so much. Oh yeah, that's the other thing: enthusiasm and like just seemingly boundless energy, and this unabashedness and like lack of fear to touch, like to just affect objects and touch things and people and whatever.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're probably the most in the moment. Like I guess both perceiving types are very process oriented. So they're not necessarily looking to like, yeah, maybe like affect a certain outcome, but they're just looking at like all the possibilities in the physical environment that they could have, and just to explore them and to like basically observe what would happen if, if they did this or that, or just like enjoy the moment of doing these things.
Yeah, I see Doms can be so fast acting. If we're doing a group outing, suddenly they might see, I don't know, maybe a better place to go to, and then they rally the whole group to go there. But I'm like, wait, I haven't even realized that I'm in place 1 yet, and now to move to place 2 is too fast.
Yeah. I think this makes them really excellent at certain things, like maybe like emergency medical responders or these types of things where you just have to be like, yeah, very fast acting and decisive and just moving from one thing to the next very quickly. Yeah, and it kind of comes off when you interact with them. I think they're usually like bouncing from like one thing to the next very quickly. Okay, so I think they are people oriented as much as it brings them into new experiences. They just like interacting with people because it could just bring them into these new experiences that they haven't had yet. Whether it's just like a conversation with you, or maybe it's you have this interest that they've never done and you can go and do this thing together. This will just help them with their expansion into the world. Okay, so SE DOMs are detached from an internal sense of conceptual consistency. So I think they view every experience that they have as sort of like this singular event that is kind of entire just in the moment, but they might not see like maybe underlying meanings to things or underlying causes that are happening in reality. Yeah, so I guess in how that relates for like their life, they might not like maybe make long-term plans for themselves, and might just kind of be more like in the moment and seeing what works in this situation or that situation. Okay, moving on to the next extroverted perceiver, NE DOMs. So I feel like these ones are the most conceptual of all the extroverts. They are also kind of, I think, the most removed from reality.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to have this kind of like philosophical air about them, I think. Like they're always talking about things in this very abstract way that doesn't necessarily apply directly to like real things, and they can kind of see many multi, theories or points of view like at once at the same time, so they can kind of play with ideas in this maybe kind of like almost detached way in a sense.
Sure, yeah, like NE DOMs are known to be the most introverted, extroverted types because although extroverted intuition is extroverted, it is still intuition, so it's kind of like in your mind, in your head, like making concepts, and the concepts are by nature detached from the actual object, making NE DOMs like thinking they're introverted. I like all the NE DOMs I know have either currently think they're introverted or have at least at one point in their lives thought they were introverted. Yeah, like what Alex said, you want to watch for a flurry of ideas in their speech. Very kind of like speaking quickly and bouncing off of ideas, often not finishing sentences. I feel like this is a big one, even with me. You can see it with me, and I'm not even, like, that's my secondary function. NE is about what's possible in the future. So if that's their dominant preference, then you can watch out for, I guess, behaviors or decisions that leave the maximum number of options open in the future. Yeah, that's definitely a trend between ENFPs and ENTPs.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I guess as perceivers, they are process-oriented. So unlike the two judger extroverted types who are like trying to do something for this like end result, either to like make you feel good or like to try to help you logically, perceivers are just exploring concepts for the sake of the process. And I think they need to sometimes actually externally verbalize thoughts.
Yeah.
And they're like coming up with them as they speak.
Basically, it's their ideas have to be externalized. So unlike FEs, like making emotions, or TE making like effectiveness, and SE, I guess, manipulating like objects and circumstances, NE just needs all of their concepts to be outside. So you might not feel that because it might just be like this really enthusiastic person talking to you about all of their ideas and not even saying you must agree with my ideas or you must apply my ideas. You feel like a conceptual sponge in the presence of an NE.
Yeah. Because they need you in order to like bounce all their ideas off of you and to like, say it out loud to someone. So sometimes maybe being with an NE dom, it's like, you're just hit with like one idea to the next, to the next, to the next.
Although they can still like say it to themselves or write, so they don't need a person. That's why they think they're introverts. They don't technically need a person to exert. Like FE needs to exert their feelings to some person, but NE you can just talk to yourself in a room. Like I do this.
They are people-oriented, I guess, in as much as it exposes them to new concepts and new perspectives. So I guess like you said, you don't really necessarily need people to like utilize NE, but I think they might enjoy meeting new people because I guess NE kind of tries to encompass like all perspectives. So meeting new people is just exposing them to new perspectives that will just feed their NE. Okay, so NE DOMs are detached from any consistency in reality. They won't like probably routine a lot. They might not have a lot of preferences in terms of like their physical environment. I think they might like to just like explore new things just to try it out.
I guess like having low SI, it would also be tradition and established ways of doing things, including their own established way of doing things, not just society's.
Right, yeah. So they might have that detachment from them kind of determining what sensory things are best for them.
Yeah, let us know if you have any of your own tips on how to spot these 4 types of extroverts and if you agreed with our observations. And thanks so much for watching this video. If you like our work, consider pledging your support on Patreon. And I hope to see you next time.